The summer of game announcements has begun. We had the State of Play, the Summer Game Fest, we had the Xbox show, we had the indie show thing where they just showed a bunch of trailers back to back to back for indie games with absolutely no connective tissue. And really, if you think about it, the only physical event of those is Summer Game Fest. It's the only in-person, real-world attendance, live event. Obviously, all the content they show is pre-taped, it's very scripted, but it is a live event, and all the other stuff was completely pre-recorded. So really, there's nothing really tangibly connecting any of these things. They just happen at the same time because that's how we have traditionally done it. The only thing connecting them is the ghost of E3, if you think about it. And if you're my age, you know what that means, you know sort of the implication of that. I really wonder, okay, what is it with kids these days that are starting to follow gaming, get invested in sort of the news cycle? Do gamers still come up in this way? Do new gamers just exclusively play Fortnite and Call of Duty? I don't really know what's up with that. I don't really know if that, again, that spirit, that summer of game announcements idea even connects for younger audiences like that. We still have Gamescom coming up. Obviously, that's a more tangible thing. But yeah, when you ask all these questions, I think inevitably what you're forced to think about is, okay, number one, it is silly to get so invested in the spectacle of this time period. You are effectively just consuming ads and then rating the conferences, right? That was the classic thing back when I came up. Now that I'm an adult and have a very different sort of level of investment or kind of investment with games, I'm much more academically interested in games than in just the cultural hype cycle. That definitely occurs to me how silly that is. But obviously, I still have that soft spot for it. And that's where I get to number two, which is, okay, yeah, it is silly, but also, I think it's really interesting to look at all these events with the through line, with the lens of, okay, is this an entertaining show in isolation by itself? Regardless of whether I'll play the new James Bond or the new Double Fine game or whatever else may have been announced at any of these events, I think I can appreciate the showmanship element of it. The idea that, okay, somebody sat down to design a showcase in a way that is entertaining to watch. And the way I would characterize it is that with PlayStation, you definitely feel that they gave a shit, and I think they really pulled it off. I thought it was a great show. I thought it was very enjoyable to watch. It made a lot of sort of dramatical sense when you follow the through line of announcements and the way they paced everything. Summer Game Fest, I think, tried to do the same thing. Don't think it was as successful. And then with Xbox, you see a version of that where they don't really give a shit about that. I get the distinct impression, okay, they don't really have a sense of what's entertaining at all. They're really just rattling off a checklist. They're rattling off the notes they think they need to hit for this type of thing to work. And you can see that with the types of announcements that they gravitate toward, ending the show on Call of Duty. That only makes sense from the lens of, well, it's the most popular game in the world, right? Under the lens of, okay, let's think about who actually watches this and if they would be entertained by it and what will get a strong reaction from people. Under that lens, it makes no sense. It only makes sense if you're investor brains, if you're number brains, if that's the only thing you're looking at. Again, very silly of me to kind of call it that and to do the Microsoft is so corporate, they don't care about gamers, blah, blah, blah. Like, I realize what that sounds like. I'm very aware of that. To be fair, I feel like I can't be entirely fair to most of the announcements there because, like, okay, stuff like In Exile and just other strategy PC coded things, not really my wheelhouse, not something I can really judge accurately. But I don't think I'm the only person that couldn't shake the sense that, like, wow, every single trailer here does not feel like it's actually made for people to watch. Every single trailer here is so lethargic, poorly structured, poorly conveyed. They just assume you already know what the game is and you already care about it. Again, there's no dramatic through line. There's no, like, okay, we're gonna grab you by the balls and we're gonna take you through this thing. And I think a good example of that you saw actually in Summer Game Fest, which I said was not very successful, but the one thing they did pull off was the Resident Evil thing, where they had a weird announcement from Jun Takeuchi saying, okay, we know it's the 30th anniversary, but you'll have to be a little more patient for the next Resident Evil announcement, which implies that it's way later, like next year or something, or Gamescom. But guess fucking what? It was the same show 20 minutes later. That is what I'm talking about, right? That's something you purely do for the entertainment value and the showmanship. And yeah, I'm gonna keep repeating this point. That's silly. I shouldn't care about this, but I kind of do, cause guess what? If you make an entertaining show and I'm entertained and I like what I see, and that extrapolates to the games that I might want to buy, and like I said, I had a fun time while watching it, doesn't everybody win? Doesn't everybody win that way? I think that is important. And I think PlayStation, again, like I said, did it really the best, starting with something like Luminous Arise, where you're giving this huge debut moment to a legacy creator that might not have a touchstone with the majority of gamers today, but clearly is very important to the history of games, makes very good games, very interesting games, very unique games, and also someone that is really important to your platform, right? With Res Infinite, Tetris Effect, was present on PlayStation in the past with the original Luminous. The fact that they honor that, I think, is really cool. And again, that's a sense that we thought we had lost from PlayStation over time. So seeing it back in that way, really cool. And then obviously the big fucking one, Marvel, at the very end. Whoever assembled this trailer, whoever was in charge of this, understood the significance and the implication of putting first the Arc System Works logo, and then the Captain America shield. Somebody did their homework, they knew exactly who we were, they were familiar with our game, and again, like, Arc System Works fighting game, it feels like the kind of thing that Sony would have scoffed at only 3 years prior, right? And now it's their mainline banger that they close out the show with. I think that speaks volumes. I think that is very significant. They understand the impact of that in a cultural sense. And they did the little rewind thing at the end of the trailer where they rewound back to, okay, this is how this came to be. And I don't know if I'm the only one who thought this, but my first idea when that happened was like, oh my god, what if Ryu Tatsu's in now? Then it'll be fucking over. Obviously, that's not what happened, but I think the fact that they created that expectation speaks kind of to the craftsmanship and the, game recognized game. They just knew what was going on. But then this documentary part itself, right, I thought was so telling and so impressive, because everybody involved with that spoke about the project with just the utmost humility and respect. And I don't know, I feel like that's just so sorely missing in gaming these days, and I really like that. And again, you can't help but watch all of that with the backdrop of, oh my god, Sony spent the last 3 years completely fucking blowing up their first party, completely imploding it. The fact that they have really nothing to show in that regard and had to entirely rely on Japanese developers, third parties, and it's such a well-received show. I feel like the state of play in general has been going from strength to strength. I feel like they've just been getting better and better with every show. I want to hope that something's clicking with Sony, that they're like, hey, maybe just making money sustainably, maybe that's good enough, actually. That could be a naive idea under capitalism, right? But I don't know. That show, specifically the state of play, had me very excited. Summer Game Fest, Xbox show, not so much. All the events had some little nuggets. Again, I thought the Double Fine thing looked cool. Resident Evil 9 is definitely worth paying attention to. What else? But I think, again, my overall takeaway is I want more situations like the state of play, where they really did their homework. They really just knew who they were making this for. And I think it proves that you don't necessarily need this hard framework of something like E3 to pull off moments like that. Yeah, that's my take on that. So, hope you enjoyed this video. This was originally a rant requested by Epsilon Eagle, big time viewer of the channel. Thank you for that. If you also want to request a rant, you can check out the description. There's a URL there. You can request a rant for $5 that way. I'll rant about anything you want. This one I decided to spool out into a bigger kind of video because I had a little more to say. Yeah, and I'll catch y'all later.